This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
In 5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1.
Thanks to Rode Microphones and Harlan Hogan's VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of the Portabooth Pro. This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast with Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. From LA, George the Tech Whittam, the tech to the VO stars. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy. And here we are for another show. It's part 2 of our interview with Mary Lynn Wissner. Last week we talked about Don Pitts, ad-libbing auditions, awesome worlds, casting before the internet, diva moments, budgets, talent pool, online versus traditional casting, audio quality, manager or agent, and a whole bunch of other stuff. This week we're talking about demos, the industry post-COVID, the bullshit factor, endorsements, opinion versus science, commercial studios that used to be hubs, what's their future? ADR at home studios good or bad, changes over the last 30 years.
And you kicked it all off by asking a pretty insightful question about AI.
What are your feelings about AI coming in? I mean, we discussed this on another show a couple of weeks back, but this is affecting a portion of the voiceover industry with, artificial intelligence. How do you see that rolling out?
It's a little scary, obviously, for obvious reasons, but I can't imagine how, at least the AI I heard, it's so not human-like to me that I can't imagine that it would be too relatable for the, general consumer or whatever. So I kind of think it has a ways to go, but I definitely think it's something we're going to see. I don't know when, but I don't see the human voice going away completely, of course.
In your 30 years since you set up your own business, it has gone, like, if you actually condense what's actually happened, it is quite extraordinary, the change. We've gone from, face-to-face auditions, people going to studios.
Totally.
Home studio, everything has changed.
Yeah, if you had told me, 30 years ago, I never would have imagined that, we'd be doing everything, in our home booths and you're never walking into an office and things like that. I mean, at the time, there were a few actors that did have home studios, but that was such a luxury. That was so, mostly only like promo guys had that. So it now it's just the norm. But yeah, I've seen so much change since I first started, for sure.
So talking about home studios, though, there's obviously the good side and the bad side. What do you see as the good side of the home studio?
The good side is, you can be in the middle of the country and now have access to auditions and productions that you couldn't do or weren't given the opportunity to do, even 4 or 5 years ago. If you have a really good home studio and great connection and things like that, you can get a lot of work because they're not having to outsource it to bigger cities with bigger studios and things like that. And you are also getting the opportunity to maybe hook up with major city representation where you wouldn't have been able to do that before because most agents back then only wanted talent in LA or New York or Chicago or something. So for that part, it's great. And it's another, part of the business, having your own home studio. It's showing professionalism, with a very professional booth or good sound quality, good mic, not rinky-dinky stuff, but, really good quality equipment. And, I think an actor can make a very nice living now anywhere in the world, as long as they have a good studio and, good resources. But at the same time, there's still that little bit of that human disconnect. Even like in my office, we don't do in-person castings as much as we used to because most of the time the turnaround is so quick. We need the auditions back quicker than doing the session the next day. So you lose that human touch, but So that part of it I'm not a fan of, but it's the way it is. It's, it's what it is.
But there's also the home studio thing also opens up the door for people that probably shouldn't be in the business at all.
Exactly.
Do you see that as an issue?
Oh, I see that a lot. And sometimes it's heartbreaking to me. And I'm sure maybe George could attest to that, where I might be coaching some people and I see them, oh, my husband bought me this fabulous booth and this really wonderful Sennheiser mic, and I want to do voiceover and da-da-da. And they absolutely have no talent. They might book maybe, I don't know, 2 commercials or something in their, whatever, but they're not going to make a living out of it. And not to sound snobby or something, I can tell. I just know they're not going to make a living out of it. And I look at that booth and I just go, God, I know this great actor that could use all that stuff. It's heartbreaking sometimes. And I as a coach, when I'm coaching talent that aren't very talented, I try to be very honest, of course, in a delicate way, but I don't ever lead anybody on. And I never advise anybody to go buy all that stuff until they're ready. But some people just do because they think it's easy. So, you're always going to get that.
All sorts of different examples, gradations of that. I mean, just everything you can imagine. And so it's sad when you do see someone make a considerable investment, thinking the equipment and the microphone is 90% of their investment of becoming a professional voice actor.
Oh, it's crazy.
We can get a quality audio recording of a horrible, very bad read, bad diction, mouth, actual speech impediment, and the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've seen successful voice actors with speech impediments.
Yes.
Well, sometimes it becomes a trademark, doesn't it? Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
There are a few of those out there for sure. Yeah, I sometimes scratch my head, but
dramatically an exception.
Well, it's interesting because Sean Connery has a speech impediment. And that's his
but
trademark.
he's still Sean Connery.
Yeah, but see, I reckon. I mean, I reckon that adds some credence to his characters, though. I don't think that's to the detriment of his characters as an actor. If you turn that into a voiceover, though, does that make a difference?
Hiring Sean Connery for general voiceover, it's like if you hire Sean Connery, you're getting
Sean Connery. That's right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it's like him and Billy Connolly's another one. Exactly. There's, it's that they are a character in themselves. That voice is just its own thing, isn't it? Its own entity.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other side of the people with not too much talent investing in a studio at home is the opposite, where you've got someone who's got amazing talent but has no idea about technical stuff at all. Which obviously is going to hold them back. So how do you manage those kind of people when you're casting and you know that they'd be perfect for the job, but their home setup is rubbish?
Well, we've been seeing a lot of that lately because of, the whole pandemic thing and everybody having to be home and some people scrambling to set up, a quote unquote home studio. And then they realize how difficult it is. And that's why we have the George Whittams of the world and the Tim Tippetts and those type of people to help. But if you're not in LA or a major city, you're kind of screwed that way. So, you can watch things like, George's YouTube show, the VO Body Shop. You can watch things like that or call him to get consultations, and, other tech guys out there can do that for you, which I would advise anybody who wants to do this to do, because if you're not setting up your studio and knowing how to use the equipment properly, you're just wasting all your time and money and everybody else's time and money. And you're going to piss a lot of people off, Before, here in LA, there's pretty much a recording studio on every corner. So if you had to do a job and your home studio setup was mostly just set up for auditions, not really broadcast quality, you could just go over there and record something, But now, because of the pandemic, we've all had to work from home, and we've had to learn how to do all this stuff. And it's been a little bit of a crash course in tech stuff. But I think there's so many resources out there, whether it be YouTube or learning from George or some of these other places that, there's kind of no excuse. And if you want to do this, it's part of what you have to do. There's no two ways about it.
Do you think that COVID has slowed the spigot on the sort of influx of, oh, I can do that. I'm going to be a voiceover person.
Yes. I don't go on the pay-to-play sites, but I have a lot of students that are on there. And so many of them prior to COVID, had very successful careers on the pay-to-play sites. That's mostly where they, were making their money. And so many of them have reported to me that since this pandemic has happened, they aren't booking jobs the way they used to because it's just saturated with so many extra talent. Doesn't mean they're good talent. It's just, obviously they take anybody who signs up, but because there's so many fish in the pond, and the race to get in there quickly before the first 20 people are in there, it's crazy. So I think what's going to happen is they do get weeded out. It's frustrating as all hell, and I always tell my students that, look, the cream rises to the top. It doesn't matter if you paid for a membership somewhere. If you're not good, you're not good. They can spin their wheels all they want, but they're not going to get the bookings. They're not going to get the jobs, and it's trying, and it's tough, and I do feel badly for those talent that are worthy of these things. But
yeah, I also get the occasional actor with many years in the business, many, primarily doing like cartoons, and they have like a distinctive voice. They get a couple gigs a year. It's enough for them to live on. They're not doing gangbusters. And now they want to have a home studio because they're saying they need to stay in the mix. And so it's like, what kind of investment does it make sense for these people to make when they book 2 or 3 or 4 characters or gigs a year? So that's a really sticky one too.
Sure. I've got a few friends that are regulars on, animation series. And one of them was telling me, he had a very good home studio, but he was not, that's the other thing. Every voice actor now has had to learn how to be an engineer and a producer. And so he had to learn all of this stuff very quickly and spend like an extra couple grand on his home studio. And he said what he's noticing now is that like even some of these animation houses are going, well, wait, maybe we can just do this from now on. And, the actors are a little frustrated because if you've ever been on an animation session, usually they try to get all the actors at the same time in the room. Sometimes some people can't make it, but most of the time they try to record that way, and there's a consistency in sound and everything else. But now there's a discrepancy with sound, and this is, it's happening in so many like group type settings with like ADR or dubbing. And the directors are having to have, pre-sessions with you to go over all your recording equipment. And, it's a little bit of a train wreck, but I
got to do tests before the session, make sure it's all going to work. So when the client's on the line, they're not embarrassed by technical problems. And
some of the dubbing houses, and I know some of the animation houses actually send out like a little recording kit to some of the actors, like some of their bigger stars, to, maybe a better microphone or interface or something like that.
I've seen them send the whole thing. Like Source Connect, computer, microphone.
Yep.
Nice.
Everything except for maybe some acoustic treatment.
Wow, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. It's enough to be the actor, and now you have to also be your engineer. And for some people, that's sort of daunting.
Well, we had an example just a few weeks ago of a massive name. The recording that came back was unbelievably terrible.
Garbage.
And it's not what you would expect from the person that we're talking about, but it's just it's almost unusable.
Yeah. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well. It's like when this pandemic kicked off and everybody was told to set up at home, I was thinking, this is great. Finally, vindication for having a home studio. But then as it sort of moved on and I was getting calls from people saying, oh, can you help me set up? I've got this, I've got that. I'm thinking, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. And then the conclusion I came to was that the commercial studios that are working with these people are just wishing this pandemic would go away and we'll never, ever use home studios again.
Well, Well, if I'd have to ask, like an outfit like Voice Tracks West has to be hit incredibly hard by this. I mean, Voice Tracks West was the studio for New York, the studio for Chicago. I can't tell you how many times I've patched into Voice Tracks West for whatever gig it is. And those are all talent that may or may not have their home studio, but it's easier for the engineer because you're like, oh, patching with Voice Tracks. I don't even have to think about it. I just know that that's going to go smoothly. And, the talent doesn't have to worry about making sure their studio's all, ship shape. So those operations, what is it like, Studio Awesome and Patches and those Buzzies is another one really that they really operate out of hosting talent for other post houses.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, I know Voice Tracks West has been reasonably busy, but not the way they normally are, of course. And they do also have kind of like a one room that's like a self-serve booth with like its own entrance. So, I mean, I worry about all those studios because, it's really nice to be able to go into a studio when you're not a tech-savvy person like myself, and they just do the work and you can focus on the performance or, directing or whatever it is you have to do.
Right. It's one of those things like, like Amazon, don't wish for what you don't want, and you're going to have no like local stores left. And here's COVID, and if it is bad enough, there's going to be no local studios left.
Yeah, the trickle down is pretty crazy.
But it's also happened with the music industry, the same thing. I mean, the big sort of studios that were making, huge albums in the past, a lot of those have disappeared.
Yeah, you didn't need as many of them. It's true. I have a few studios that are able to handle a big drumming session, and then everything goes back in.
Rhinoceros Studios here in Sydney was massive. How many massive Australian albums would they have done over the years? AP hundreds.
That was
hundreds
In
of
Excess
thousands.
built that studio, and I remember when it was built in the 80s, it was just extraordinary. That massive SSL desk and all the bells and whistles, and they did all their records there, but they did
gone.
So many records and then gone.
Yep, disappeared.
Talk about the internet, though. The thing is, like you said, it's a great resource, which it can be. But the problem is, like, the more I look at this stuff, the more I realize people just follow opinion and don't follow the facts and make really dumb decisions based on some idiot that's put some YouTube thing up about you should do this or you should do that.
Or some stupid podcast.
Yeah. I hate tech. I hate tech support by committee. That's one thing that really bugs me.
Yeah.
What microphone are you guys liking these days? Or, what kind of EQ should I use on my voice? Or,
none,
etc.
None is the answer to that question.
Right, exactly.
But I saw a thing the other day where someone obviously, in fact, one of the people that chimed in is actually very well known to pretty well all of us, talking about a certain product that you stick on a microphone that's round with a blue thing on the front. Singing the virtues
like an
of it.
eyeball.
And everybody was just like
things.
caning this person. And
Wait, I lost what you said. Did you say they were
beating them?
They were praising this product?
no, this one person was, and then this everybody just came in and attack, and got to the point where one person actually did a huge piece going through the science of why this thing does not work. And then at the bottom, it's like, well, that's what you think, but I think it's great. It's like, hang on a minute. That's ridiculous.
But that's social media in general. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily just that one poster. That's opinionated assholes.
It's an outrage
Those things are good for doing your dishes.
Yeah.
It's an outrage
Those
engine.
make an excellent sponge.
Yeah.
Wait, so they were singing the praises of it, you're saying, and people were responding that it's crap, right?
Yeah.
And then someone came in with science about why it's crap, and they went, I ignore your science, and I believe my own committee or whoever it might be that...
Well, they're being sponsored, you know.
Well, you never know.
It's very
there's
it's
a lot
very
of
clear.
endorsers who don't disclose they endorse product. I mean, I after a couple of years on Facebook groups, I start seeing who is endorsed by who because there's an ongoing support of extremely specific tools or softwares, that they always recommend without fail. And yes, I say Twisted Wave all the time. Mm-hmm. And trust me, I have no endorsement deal with Twisted Wave.
But you're endorsing it because it's a
doesn't
quality
have one.
product. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as us
it's true,
talking about the NTG5
Yeah.
all the time, but, prove to me that it's crap because you can't. There's, it's a
Yeah,
stand-up
exactly.
microphone. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Mary Lynn,
Yeah.
you would see all sorts of things on the internet about getting into voiceover, casting. Everybody is a coach at the moment. How's that affecting you?
It's so unnerving. It's unnerving. It's disappointing. And I've talked to many of my friends and colleagues, that have been in the business as long as I have. And we have the expertise. We know what we're talking about and we love what we do. So I don't know, there's nothing you can do about it because it's just, anybody can do that. But I do believe that, eventually the cream does rise to the top and expertise does speak for itself and track record speaks for itself. But yeah, it's frustrating and it's a little disheartening, but I think in a way that people do what they think they need to do, and I just say, bless them. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I think if you push it hard enough, you can make people believe what you want to believe. For me,
some people are really
everybody's
good at kind of bullshitting. I mean, some people are just really good, throwing around the accolades or whatever, and some people are just really good at that. But like I said, the truth comes out eventually. It really does. And word does get around. And, the one thing about the voiceover community I've always noticed and have always loved about it, as opposed to say, like the on-camera world, most of the time, it's very supportive and mostly pretty kind, My ex-husband is a commercial on-camera casting director, and that world is a little more harsh and judgmental and things like that. And I think in the voiceover world, people are a little bit more supportive of each other. So I'd like to see that kind of continue. And like I said, the charlatans will eventually get weeded out or discovered at some point or another.
Yeah, the trouble is that bullshit makes more noise than non-bullshit. That's one of the biggest issues.
True.
And the other part of this is that if people get used to something, then that becomes the new normal. So,
True.
like they get used
it's like
to crap.
non-announcer, talent that comes in and essentially has nothing, and now everyone wants someone who sounds unrehearsed.
Yeah.
Even though they don't really want that, they think they want that, They think they want like everyman and don't sound like an announcer. But really, even then, you still want someone who can kind of put it in the proper light. And you're trying to give these directions that don't necessarily really mean the same thing. Like, if you don't read it like an announcer, it will sound just right off the page, really boring.
Yeah.
Does that make it not announcery or just bad?
But then, it's also the audio quality. People get used to bad audio and that becomes the new norm, I mean, you just flick on the radio or watch TV or whatever and you're hearing stuff that you've never heard before thinking, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. How the hell did this get on air,
Maybe because I'm more of a lay person as far as audio quality goes. I mean, obviously I know bad sound, but I wonder too, because you're such an expert at that, you can pinpoint things more clearly than the average lay person who might not notice some discrepancies in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but would George Lucas put out Star Wars episode, whatever the next one would be, with half-assed audio? I don't think so. I think regardless of whether you know it's bad or not, surely if you're charged with putting out a product, you're charged with putting out the best product you can. I would imagine would be certainly be the way George Lucas.
Well, maybe
Lucas
the best I can do is an SM58 with the built-in converter of a Mac.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the way of the world, and I guess it won't change, unfortunately. But also, just like AI and a lot of the other things we've talked about, I think there will always be a call for quality, regardless.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think there will.
Absolutely, I hope so too. Yeah.
Going back to the coach thing, do you find that, you see a lot of these websites where it's like, you must have a demo and I'm going to produce your demo, and some of these things get really expensive. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars. Or there's all the mirrored like coaching options and everything else. And do you find that some people just get lost in that world? Sometimes they're even pros and they have a career, but they are in some sort of constant self-doubt or something. It's like, do you really need all this coaching? Is this really improving anything? Or are you just caught in a sort of marketplace of telling you need something that you don't?
I think that depends on the coach. There are, and I'm doing air quotes again, there are coaches out there that are just into making the money, and they will tell you you're ready for a demo. They will tell you, if you take 6 lessons with me, I'll get you that will include a demo at the end of the 6 lessons. Or, and if you want, we can throw in a promo demo and an animation demo, and I'll give you a discount on that. And they get kind of caught up in the whole Barnum and Bailey type thing. And maybe those people or that person never should even be in voiceover class coaching yet. They should be in acting classes first, there are some coaches that go about it the totally wrong way, and in my opinion, the really damaging way, because you're building up false hope for these people. And then they get these really, nicely produced demos, or hopefully nicely produced demos. And then they're going to send that out to some big agents or casting directors, and we hear them and we just go, oh, well, that's crappy. Or we go interview that talent, and they, like I said earlier, they can't replicate anything near what they did. Right. So there's those, and I think that's kind of true for any industry out there. There's those like charlatans, those people out there that will take advantage of people and their money. And it's very, very sad. And I used to get so upset about it and try to help a lot of actors who had been abused that way. And just recently, I kind of decided I don't know that I can do that anymore, because it sort of sometimes backfires on me.
There's so many stakeholders that you have to worry about who you're offending, even though, it might be something that you feel is true. It's like, I know lots of people that do demos and everything, but I think that everyone, you use your demo to get to an agent, and then you don't need your demo anymore because you're auditioning, and it seems like, why do you need 80 different demos? You need one demo enough to get you that conversation with an agent.
Yeah, you're right.
You prove your stuff or not.
Yeah, there's a couple demo people out there that, think you have to have a demo for, this is the demo for when you're at home making dinner, and this is the demo for political, and this is the demo for, whatever. It's crazy. All I can say is buyer beware. Do your homework, ask around, get to know, listen to the producers' demos that they've produced, of people that they've produced that are similar to you.
So much stuff is all audition anyways, that are these demos really paying for themselves? I really wonder.
Yeah, like you said, the demo nowadays is really just to get the agent. However, I have seen, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, like in the last year or so, and even maybe a little bit with the whole COVID casting world, but where a lot of times ad agencies don't have a budget for big casting or anything like that, or they just say, send us some demos of the 5 people that their voices fit this, and we'll tell you which ones we want to hear read it. And then that's how they've cast, if you will, which is different. It's kind of unusual.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice, that is nice. But it's limiting.
Well, it's so funny how many different opinions there are. I've talked to other talent that have their thing down. They are a known quantity, and they're like having to audition for the gig that they've been doing for the last 2 years, but they still have to audition for it every 3 months or something. Even though it's like, don't you know already?
I see that happening more in animation than commercial, but yeah, it does happen. It's
got to be tough for a demo producer that is their business.
Yeah.
And so when someone comes to them saying, okay, I've always had a dream of being a voice actor, and I have the money. I got the money. I'm a surgeon. Yeah. And I've done surgery for 40 years. I am ready to spend money on this career. And then how do you tell them no when they come to you with the money and they're willing to be coached, and they take direction, and they make it through a demo, and then they're spit out into the real world, and they ain't booking a dang thing. I get those people on my lap from time to time, and of course they think it's their equipment, they think it's the microphone, it's a million different things. That's just such a difficult situation I see come up a lot.
There are those people that, given enough money, will be able to buy themselves a career. And
you know what, though? I've seen it too, but I'll be honest with you. They can buy themselves a career for sure. I have definitely seen that, but they don't sustain it. They just don't, because they just, and they might even buy themselves an agent and do all the whining and dining and all that kind of stuff.
They might get a big gig or two, a big client or two.
But they rarely get the big, they just don't book. They might book a couple things here and there, or maybe the agent has even thrown something towards them. But eventually they peter out. I see it happen. They don't last very long. Yeah. They'll last, that was a fun little thing. Oh, that was hard. Yeah, I tried, but that Hollywood, it's crazy. I recently had I never have a rant on Facebook, and I recently had one because this poor guy just has absolutely no talent. My heart breaks for him. And he finally had a consultation with me because he wanted to do commercial coaching with me. And I had only seen him come to our VO Pros workshops where I have guest instructors. And I hadn't really seen him in one of the classes. And when I had him do copy, he couldn't do anything. He just couldn't. He actually has some issues. And my heart was breaking, and I just said, what have you done? I know you've been doing this for years. He goes, oh, well, so-and-so told me I could do a demo now, and so-and-so told me this. And it made me so furious for him. His parents had given him all this money to do this. I'm not saying I'm a saint, but at the same time, I just thought, and I told him, I said, I can't have you come to any more of our VO Pros classes because in good conscience, I don't want you to be embarrassed. And I can't take your money. I don't feel good about that. And he just said, oh, well, I'll find another coach. I'll go somewhere else. And I'm like, whatever, and what can I do, And everybody just kind of rolls their eyes and they'll take the money. But I have always told my talent that coach with me, or even that do my workshops or whatever, I say, my name goes out there with you. Because when you're going to an agent and an agent says, okay, who have you worked with? They give them my name. And I don't want to be, associated with something that's not promising or talented or professional and so on. So, and I think that speaks to why I've been around for a long time, because I'm honest and I love the world of voiceover. So I feel like I have some integrity to try and at least, keep that going as best I can. I'm not perfect, but you know what I mean.
You definitely have the integrity.
I'd like to see more voiceover buddy groups where you just get together and you read some stuff and you talk about the industry and you get some perspective and everything, but it's not like one person who's coaching somebody who they call them
workout groups. Don't they call them workout groups, right?
Yeah. And it's not like I know what you need,
Yeah, I know there's a few out here in LA. I mean, of course, I'm sure they're not meeting now, but there are some supportive groups like that, which is really nice. And there, of course, used to be that wonderful FAFCon, which isn't around anymore. But, I think we all kind of need to get back to that. I will say I've noticed on Facebook that there are quite a lot of forums and groups. I saw one the other day. It was like voiceover mamas. It's just all women who are mothers, but also have a voiceover career. And I was looking through it, and it was really nice. It was just a nice supportive group of women. And what do you do when your kid's having a tantrum outside the booth? Things like that. So
I don't know. Pay me, and I'll tell you what to do.
Throw them the candy. So I think that there are, iterations of support groups out there, but unfortunately we can't be in person right now, so that's kind of sad.
Yeah. What do you see after COVID is finished? How do you see the landscape of your business?
I think that's actually a really good question, because Well, I was talking to another, voiceover friend of mine the other day about it. I said, what's going to happen? Like, do you really think that they're going to make everybody, record from home now? Do you really think this? And we both kind of figured out it might go on for a little while longer, the recording from home. But I think that when they realize that it's easier to have, like you were saying, that like the Voice Tracks West of the world and the studios we can bridge to, the time will be an issue of making things come back to normal. And then all those people that sort of decided they could be a voice actor while COVID was going on will sort of realize, okay, I don't have time for this. I got to get back to my regular job. I had parents whose kids went to school with my kids, like 10, 15 years ago, calling me up, Mary Lynn, do you still do that voiceover thing? I mean, I'm home now and I think I could do that. It was just crazy. And I think all those people were sort of peter out. That's sort of what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the studios can reopen and actors, yes, will be able to have that opportunity to record at home or go to a studio. And, we won't hear so many of those, we're all in this together commercials. And, we can run around without, masks and gloves. I'm praying for that.
I think it's going to be some mix of all of it. Yeah. There's going to be some people that just walk out of it going like, wow, that worked. And let's not even pay a lease anymore. And then others that are like, thank God.
Oh, I know. There's some talent agencies that I know of that are closing their brick and mortar to just have the agents all work from home now. And they're going to keep it that way. So it'll be really interesting.
What's the best thing? I mean, obviously the worst thing is that, all these in inverted commas, voice actors have come out of the walls. What's the best thing to come out of all this, do you think? What's something you hope will stick around? The best thing is that I think we've all gotten more tech savvy and more appreciative of those tech savvy geniuses like the George Whittams of the world and, more professional that way. And I think also it's sort of forced other, actors that maybe didn't stay with their training to get back in their training and maybe also discover some new genres of voiceover that they maybe didn't dabble in before. So I think some of that could be considered very positive. But, it's kind of scary because I've seen some people lose accounts and some agents close their doors and, so I'm always a glass half full person. So I'm really hoping that some good comes out of, this black hole. Well, George, I think the positive thing for you to come out of this interview is that you need to keep Mary Lynn on the payroll, mate, because she's plugging you galore, buddy.
Yes, thank you very much, Mary Lynn.
Oh, well, that's why you're George Whittam, it's just...
Business has been stiff. I'm quite happy about not happy about COVID, but happy that I was in the right place at the right time and doing this remotely now for many years. Having all the systems in place, having the experience to be able to support people from a long distance and, effectively. I'm very lucky that I prepared for that, So for me, it's sort of pretty much status normal, just a little bit less driving around in the city, which I'm actually kind of happy with.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but yeah, I'm quite comfortable and happy supporting people from afar, from any level, from just, you're talking into the wrong side of the mic to this is how you're going to build your entire studio. I mean, I'm doing it all right now with people, so it's...
What about this is great. How you set up your chaotic eyeball?
Yeah, this is where you put your chaotic eyeball. Exactly. This is exactly where you put it.
Yeah, bend
I'll
over.
Tell you where exactly to put it.
On that note, I think we should pull the pin and say thank you, Mary Lynn.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. This was a fun Friday night adventure and definitely great to talk with you all and all that good stuff.
This show was mixed by Voodoo Sound. Edit by Andrew Peters, using Source Connect Now and Rode microphones, with technical support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe and like us.
You look for trouble.